There are places in the world where I can't start my own business. There are places in the world where I can't have conversations like we have here without having somebody come after me and say, you can't talk like that. There are a lot of places in the world where the opportunities we have here in the United States do not exist. And we take it for granted because there's people out there who have defended it for us and who have paid the price for it.
Welcome to Grit Meets Growth, the podcast where we explore getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. Now let's get after it.
Should we just dive in and start?
We should.
Okay. What episode 30?
We're number 30, and it's the week of Independence Day in America. This great United States of America that we live in. This week we celebrate our independence. It's one of the most patriotic, quote unquote, holidays of the year, right? Let's call it a celebration. It's the most patriotic celebration that we do all year long. And I'm excited about it.
I know you are, man. I can see it as we're recording this. I can see it in your eyes that you're excited about it. Dig into that, man. Like, what makes you excited about 4th of July?
It's everything about it. It's everything about the 4th of July. It's the celebration of our freedoms and our independence. It is the coming together of communities and families and the celebrations that happen there. It's the fireworks. I love some fireworks. I love lighting them off. I love going to see them. Hopefully you find somewhere that has a good show this year.
You know what's interesting about this conversation, and just based on the last 6 months, last 6 years, however you want to frame this up, having conversations about how much you love America in America right now is a dangerous thing to do because people get all freaked out about it. You use the word patriot, people get freaked out about that. Like, we've politicized being American to a point where we have to apologize if we want to be excited for the 4th of July. If we want to wear a shirt that has a flag on it, if we want to be proud that we live in America, there's this segment of the population that wants us to apologize for that. And I am done with it.
Apologies here, man. I love this country. I love what it represents. I love the freedoms that it provides us. I love our flag. I fly it every day. I mean, I have one in my office, for crying out loud.
I see it every time I talk to you. Yeah.
Right.
We've had the conversations. For us to do what we do, for both of us to be entrepreneurs who have started our own businesses, who have these conversations every couple of weeks, who have a lot of freedom to create the lives we want for us and for our families, there's a lot for us to be excited about and proud of when 4th of July hits. And it's unfortunate that the climate is what it is, where that becomes political, that being proud of where you live and excited to be American in the United States gets tainted by a lot of the junk that the media puts out, a lot of the junk that's in the news. We should be able to stand up and be proud of this, have conversations about it. And that's why we're having this conversation, because we are proud of it. We are excited about it. We are happy to be here. You hit on something earlier. I don't know if you've still got it in front of you or not, but you hit on something earlier, and it was how does grit, which is one of the main topics we talk about all the time, how does it relate to patriotism, being American? And you started going down the path. They're pretty tightly tied together.
Yeah. So this was an article written in, I think this quote comes out of an article written in the Washington Post in 2015. And it comes from Judy Holland, who was the editor and founder of parentinsider.com. She wrote that the coddled kids of the self-esteem movement in the 1980s produced children who were softer, slower, and less likely to persevere. She went on to say, grit is defined as passion and perseverance in pursuit of long-term goals. She continued that grit determines who survives at West Point, who finals in the National Spelling Bee, and who is tough enough not to be a quitter.
Take that back in history, grit defined our forefathers.
Absolutely.
Who stood up against British oppression to say, we're done. This isn't okay. We're going to take our freedom and we're going to create a country where we can provide that freedom to everybody who lives here. There was a lot of grit involved. You start to dig through history, you start to dig through those stories. Those stories are full of grit, full of people, men and women, who went out on a limb and took risks and said things that weren't popular and did things that were uncomfortable, which we talk about all the time. You want to talk about doing uncomfortable things. They did a lot of uncomfortable things. That's where that freedom comes from. Our freedom here in the United States as we celebrate 4th of July is based on grit.
And based on those long-term goals, right? Long-term goal is the foundation of grit. I'm experiencing some of that every day, right? Having the goal set, having eye on the prize, but man, you got to go through the grind every day. You just have to execute every single day. Whether you want to, whether you like to, it doesn't matter. You just have to do it. And I think if we talk about that from our forefathers in, 1776 and previous to that, they had a goal. Those were their long-term goals and they were set on it and they were going to find a way to make it happen. And I'm thankful every day that they did.
Well, and alongside that goal, they had a vision. And I think we need to approach our lives with that same thing. We need to have vision for where we want to go, what we want to build, how we want to create our lives, what do we want that to look like for us, our families, the people around us. If you're going to set goals without vision, it's pretty challenging. If you know what your vision is, you know what you're trying to create, you can get really dialed in on the goals that are going to get you there. And I feel like that's what our forefathers did. They had a vision for what this country could be and for what it could become. And that's living itself out every day. Now, you can look at this and you can go, well, America is not perfect. And you'd be right. You would absolutely be right. But it's still, even with its imperfections, in my opinion, it's the best place to be. And it's where I want to be.
So much divide that's been created. And it seems like that's where the media wants us to be, that they want us divided. For what reasons? I don't know. But the reality is, we don't have to agree on every topic. We can still be friends and not agree on everything. This polarization that social media, the mainstream media want us to believe exists doesn't have to. And my hope is that the listeners here and the fact that it is the 4th of July and Independence Day can put differences aside, love what this country represents in whole, love what our Constitution provides for us, and all celebrate together with smiles on their face. That's my hope for the 4th of July.
It's funny to hear you say that because it absolutely flies in the face of what so many voices would like to tell us we need to do with that. There's so many voices and so much noise out there right now that says, if we don't agree, I need to cancel you. I should hate you. I should try to shut you down, and I should not have anything to do with you. My camp, your camp, my tribe, your tribe, nothing in the middle. If we don't agree, we can't be friends. We can't have conversations. We shouldn't even communicate at all. That's the culture that we live in right now. And it's sad to me. It's interesting. I was on doing a little bit of research as we got ready to dive into this episode, and you had brought up the word patriot, which I think is a really interesting word right now because it's been just villainized. If I'm a patriot, I'm a bad person, which is clearly not the case. But as I started digging into it, I ended up on Black Rifle Coffee, and they had a blog post specifically on what it means to be a patriot. And one of the things that they talked about is if we politicize what it means to be a patriot, we're missing the boat. And just a clip out of this blog post that was interesting. It flies in the face of both the history of the word and the history of the United States. To give a famous example, Pat Tillman was, if not liberal, certainly not a conservative by any stretch. Yet he still traded in his football uniform for an Army one and eventually paid the ultimate price for it. Was Tillman not a patriot? If his atheist, anti-authoritarian, and anti-war beliefs mean that he can't bear that title in today's climate, then all indeed is lost. But if we can agree that patriotism can include someone like Tillman, then it means that the term can exist independent of politics. And if it can exist apart from politics, and it has already been shown to exist apart from military service, perhaps the word patriot can circle back to its old meaning of simply loving and supporting one's country. That points to it again. We don't have to agree on everything to love and support the place that we live, the place we call home, the place we raise our families. The whole point of this was that we didn't have to agree. We didn't all have to come at the world through the same lens, on the same page, same religion. There was room for all of us to coexist and to be respectful of that within the United States of America. We've broken that down. We've broken that down and worked really hard to destroy it. We're lucky it's got a strong foundation, but we've worked really hard to destroy it.
Not we, but parties within our country. And not political parties. People. Parties of people. Yeah, I mean, by definition, right? Patriot is one who loves and supports his or her country. That's the definition, plain and simple. We have there is a lot to love and support about the United States of America. Do we always agree with what's going on in the political arena and decisions that are made? Nope. But we all have opportunity to change that. And I truly believe we still have that opportunity today. We have the opportunity to vote. Make the changes at the ballot box, right? We've said that for years and years and years. Make the changes at the ballot box. We have that opportunity. And the reality is our candidate's not always going to win. But if we have grit and a long-term goal, we have opportunity in the future.
I would say along those lines, even on a very small scale local level, we have opportunities every day to look around our community and find ways to make our community better. You want to live out being a patriot? Look around your community. Find ways you can help. Find ways you can make your community stronger. Fill some of the gaps that your community has. A lot of the people who are complaining about the word patriot at the same time are sitting on the sidelines watching and not doing anything. Get in the game and do something to make your community better, to impact your circle.
Goes back to the conversation we had a couple weeks ago. Start with you. Start with the individual. Get your house in order. Get yourself right, first and foremost. Then you're in a position to be able to go to your community, impact your community. There may be times that impacting the community is part of you getting you right. But get out there and do that work. Have some grit. Focus on those goals and put in the work.
I would say, too, if we're going to have a conversation about 4th of July, patriotism, part of it needs to lean back into, and the Pat Tillman bit speaks to this a little bit, acknowledging the sacrifice that so many people made so that we have these freedoms, so that the 4th of July existed in the first place and that it exists today, that it still exists, because there are a lot of men and women who have put it all on the line in our military. All of the branches of the military, the forces that are out there, they've put it on the line to make sure we have this freedom. We don't have the right, based on what they've given up for us to be sitting here having this conversation today. We don't have the right to take it for granted. Because there are spouses at home who don't have husbands and wives today because they left it on a battlefield and didn't come home. If we take this for granted, or we whine about 4th of July and patriotism, we don't like the word, we don't like it, it just doesn't fit us anymore. If that's who we're going to be, and we're not going to honor the sacrifice that those people made on our behalf so we could sit here, that's pretty low. And I think to acknowledge that as we move into the 4th of July, but not even just this, it doesn't have to be just a 4th of July thing. I think that's the other thing is patriotism, 4th of July, being proud to be an American is not a 1 day a year or 2 days a year thing. Like you said, you've got a flag behind you. It's there every time I talk to you. I know where I stand when I see you, because I see the flag. It's a daily thing for you. And I think we could all take a note from that and say, I'm proud to be an American today, tomorrow, in October, November, in January. It's not just a summertime thing. It's easy to think about in the summertime and the fireworks are going off and all those things, but this needs to be a 365 thing for us. We're proud to be Americans 365 days a year. And we're acknowledging that service and that sacrifice 365 days a year, not just 1 or 2 days a year.
Well, we're talking about the flag, and you see a lot of flags for the 4th of July, a lot of red, white, and blue, regardless. Should we talk about what the flag consists of and what it means?
Do it, man.
So today's flag consists of 13 horizontal stripes, 7 red alternating with 6 white. The stripes represent the 13 original colonies, and the stars represent the 50 states of the Union. The colors of the flag are symbolic as well. Red symbolizes hardiness and valor. White symbolizes purity and innocence. And blue represents vigilance, perseverance, and justice. A lot of meaning in one piece of fabric. There's a lot there. And I think a lot of that speaks still today to who we are as a country, what we represent, people from all walks of life, a melting pot from around the world. Things aren't always easy, right? We have to have that hardiness and valor. Got to stick with it. But we also have to walk into situations with some innocence and purity and stand up for what's right and persevere and have that justice, have justice and what's right at the forefront. It's a tall order to be American.
As you're talking about that, I think back to my grandfather, who I never met, but came over here from Greece and came over here for, same as so many immigrants at that point, came over here for all the opportunities that America offered. He came over here because he knew it was a place where he was going to have room to grow. It was going to be a place where it was going to be good for him to raise a family. It was going to be a place where opportunity abounded. And if he worked hard, he could create something that was going to be worth creating, that he'd be able to be proud of as he grew older. And there's just something about that. Every time I think about that, there's a picture of him right behind me. He did a lot of different things when he came over here. He ran a small cafe. He He ran a candy store. He taught my dad, my uncle, and my aunt how to work at a very young age, how to put in effort. And I think that's another thing when I think about him. One of the ways he was patriotic and he honored the opportunity that he had to live here was he showed up every day and he worked hard. He showed up every day and he took care of the people around him. Behind that picture behind me right now, there's a picture of him in his cafe. That picture used to hang in my grandma's house. And when my grandma died and we looked behind the picture, we were just digging through stuff. There was a note behind that picture that basically said, "When I was hungry, you fed me," which is it's a Bible verse. But it spoke to, he used that cafe that where he was selling sandwiches as a way to make sure the people in his circle were taken care of. He worked hard. He took care of the people around him. He took advantage of every opportunity he had while he was here, and he loved living here in America. That's it right there for me. Like when I think about all of this, I go back to him and I go back to, am I taking advantage of my opportunities the way he did?
Well, and I think too, so 4th of July in essence is, so for you, 4th of July is really about history. Takes you back to the history of your family and being here in America. I think that's telling, because I think that's, as I'm listening to you say that, 4th of July is about history. It's about history of our country. It's about history of each one of our families. And it's a real opportunity for us to reflect upon that. And I think to your point, ask the question, am I doing my part? Would my grandfather be proud of what I am today in America?
That's a big question that I've never thought about before, but that's a big question because it points to all the sacrifices he made to get here, to lay the groundwork where our family could be here, the risks that he took, the work that he did. Have we done our part to stand up to our end of that bargain and not waste the opportunity that he gave us? And, not take it for granted, because I take it for granted every day. I've never thought about it through this lens, but I take that for granted every day. And I probably won't after this conversation.
It's easy with where we're at in today's world to take a lot for granted. And that's why I think that as I've listened to you say that, like the history, am I doing all of those components, really is a point of reflection for us.
When you ask that question, it's impossible to ask that question and be reflecting on that and at the same time be angry and pissed off about everything that's going on in the world that you don't like. You can focus on one or the other. But I guess my challenge would be focus on, are you holding up your end of the bargain? Are you doing your part? The negative stuff will continue to play in the news. It'll continue to be on social media. The negativity is not going anywhere. All we can do within our circles is do our part to push back against that.
Right. And focus on the things that we can change. Focus on the things that we can influence. There is so much in this world today that we have no influence over. But there's also a lot that we can have influence over and focus on. And we've talked about that. Focusing on ourselves, focusing on our family, focusing on our community. That's where you can make real change. And if we as a culture can get into that mindset and we're all doing that, the bigger change will happen. But you have to start small. It has to start with each one of us individually.
This is a good prep conversation for 4th of July, because there's a lot of times where it's a lot like Memorial Day. It's a fun day. hamburgers, hot dogs, parades, slips past, and the real meaning of the day can get washed up underneath all of the stuff. And especially now, it's easy to do that. This is a good reminder to reflect back on the history, reflect back on the meaning, and get dialed back in on why we celebrate the 4th of July.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing up patriotism as we were coming in to record this episode. This was a good conversation, man. I appreciate you stirring this up, because it's gotten me thinking about things that I haven't thought about in a long time. And it will help me to see the 4th of July through a little different lens this year.
Yeah. Love your country. Telling you, love everything about it. Love the disagreement, love the agreement, love what our country represents. There is no other place in the world like it. Thankful every single day that I live in it.
Same.
Enjoy the day. Use it for some reflection. Think about the meaning in every one of those celebrations that you go to today, because it's there if you look at it and you reflect upon it. Enjoy.
Happy 4th of July, man.
Happy Independence Day.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of Grit Meets Growth. We have 2 asks for you as we wrap things up today. First of all, if you enjoyed this podcast or you got something out of it today, we'd love to have you subscribe and follow us so that you can get your ear in on more of these conversations. And the second thing we'd love to have you do is, if you heard something today that you think could help somebody else or that they need to hear, we just ask you to share the podcast and let this message be magnetic to as many people as possible. So with that, have an awesome day. Make it happen. Get out there, do the work, and let's get after it.